It is 8 o'clock, so let's get started. Welcome everybody to Games with Go, a stream where I will be teaching programming by making some games in the Go programming language. Um, we're going to start at a slow pace. I want this to be accessible to beginners and people of all ages, so everyone is welcome. If you have some programming experience already, you might check back in a week or two, or hang out and you can still learn some basics of the Go language if you're not familiar with it already. Today, we're just going to focus on setting up a development environment. And what that means is just getting all of the programs installed that you need to uh, create your own programs and Go. If you already know how to do this, then this episode won't be very useful. Um, all the software we're going to use is free and cross-platform. So while I'm on Windows, if you're coming from a Mac or from Linux, you'll be able to use exactly the same software. It'll look the same, work the same. So it'll be easy to follow along if you want to. So the first thing you need if you want to do some programming is a compiler for the language that you want to write code in. And so the compiler for the Go language can be had from the official Golang website. Um, that's at this link here. And I'm going to paste that into chat so you can just click on it. They have links here for Windows, Mac OS, and Linux. So you just need to click on the one appropriate for your operating system. And I've actually uninstalled everything on my machine, so I'm going to go through this with you at the same time. So I'm going to click on the Windows link, and it's going to start downloading. And if you're on a Linux or Mac, there's some extra instructions for installing that you'll want to read up here in the install instructions section. With Windows, it's just a setup program that runs, so it's pretty easy. Someone is asking how many people are present, and if I am interpreting Twitch correctly, it looks like there are 17 people here right now. There's a lot of people following, so maybe some people are going to be watching later. So once the download is finished, that goes pretty fast for me because I have a fast internet connection. You want to go to your downloads folder and run it. And you'll see the setup program pop up. And I believe you can just click through this as fast as you want because all the default things are fine. It'll install the files to c:/go. And we'll say install. And it doesn't take very long. And we're done. And you can click finish. And if anyone's having any trouble with these steps, let me know and we'll work through the problem. All right. I don't see any questions. So one thing we'll want to do is actually make sure that it's installed properly. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to open up a command prompt or a terminal. On Windows, you can do that by going to the Start menu or hitting your Windows key on your keyboard and type CMD, and you'll see the command prompt come up. And just click on that, and you'll get this little window. If you're not familiar with command prompt at all, this is a good thing to start getting familiar with. It's just another way to kind of work with your computer instead of using like the folders here and clicking around. You can do things with text commands, and lots of programming tools are operated by the command line only. So it's something you'll need to learn. So if the Go compiler has been installed, you'll be able to type go hit enter, and you'll see a bunch of text come back. If you don't see that, if instead you see command not found or some other error message, then Go isn't installed right, and you'll need to try again. All right, so for most people, if you opened up your command prompt the way I did, you will start out in your home directory. And you'll see it says C:/users, and it'll be your username on your machine. If that isn't where you are, you can get there on Windows by typing cd for change directory, %, and then user profile, %. And that tells Windows just to take you to your home directory. So I was already there, so we're still there. So the Go compiler has some conventions where it expects your source code to be. You can change this, but by default, it should be in a folder called Go within your home directory. So we can make a new folder by typing mkdir for make directory, and then type Go. That's the directory name we want to make. So if we type that, and then type dir to list all of the folders in the current directory, we'll now see that there's a Go folder in there. And we can move into it with cd for change directory, Go. And we'll type dir again. That's empty. And we're now going to need to make a source directory. Again, this is a convention that Go uses. So we're going to say make dir src for source, and then we're going to change into the source directory. Now the next two steps might seem kind of weird to you, but the code that your stuff goes into has a directory structure related to what source control you use. And a lot of you may not use any yet. For now, you can just pretend that you're going to use GitHub. You may not. So we're going to make another directory called github.com. Make dir github.com. All right. Someone is saying the mic volume is a little low, so I'm going to crank it up some more. Is that better? You can let me know in chat if that's a little louder. So another folder, github.com. I'll crank the mic up a little more. Then we'll change into that directory again. And finally, you'll make a directory with either your GitHub username, or you can just pick whatever username you want. So for me, it'll be this. And then all of your different programs are going to go in here. Okay? And you can kind of see here the full path we've set up. It's kind of a pain, but you only have to do this once, and then you're ready to go. All right, next step, we're going to need to install a program called Git. Git is a source control program that you can use to sort of save your code along with a history of everything you've done. All programmers will use a tool like Git if they don't use Git in particular. We're not going to be using it directly, at least anytime soon, in the streams, but some of the Go tools need it. So we're going to get this. So I'll put this link into chat. And if you go here, the Git webpage should show you a link for the operating system that you're on. So I'm on Windows. It's giving me a Windows link over here. If you're on Linux, you'll see a Linux link. So this starts downloading. And then when that's ready, go to your downloads folder and run it. Oh, it actually got the wrong thing for me. Let's see. So the default thing it downloaded wasn't right for my machine. Let's try clicking on the link. I'm going to try clicking on the 64-bit Git for Windows setup. I definitely have a 64-bit machine. Oh, it was still downloading. That's what's wrong. It seems that the Git server is not the fastest. Okay. There we go. So once the download finishes, you'll run it, tell Windows it's okay to run it. And I believe, again, you can just click through all the default options. You might want to look through here and see if you want to change things. Create a shortcut. Yeah, just click all the default options unless you know you want to do otherwise. All right, and then if you close your command prompt, you can type exit to close it and bring up a new one. Again, you type cmd, command prompt. You should be able to type git and see a bunch of text. That lets you know it is in fact installed. Has anyone had any trouble with that step? All right, we will move on to the third and final thing that we need. You need some kind of text editor, and you could use anything. You can use Notepad if you want. Anything where you can type and save text files is fine. But there are editors that have a lot of nice features that are convenient. And the one we're going to use on the stream is called Visual Studio Code. And it's a free cross-platform text editor that has a plugin system. And there is a really nice Go plugin for it. And that will do things like highlight our functions and variable names according to Go's syntax. And it can show us when there's errors as we type. Lots of handy stuff like that. So the link to download this from, I'm going to put that in chat. And this will also show you the download for your operating system. And you click on it, save it, then wait for it to finish. And that was fast. So once it downloads for you, just double click and run it. Accept the agreement. And just go through all the default options unless you know otherwise. And wait for it to install. Okay, I'm gonna wait a little bit because some people probably don't have blazing fast internet. Um, if you don't want to use VS Code, and some people might not, it uses a lot of resources, so you might want something that's more efficient. Um, there is a list of text editors that have built-in Go support. This lists a few of them, but there's one with more. Oh, here we go. So I'll put this link in chat. This has a list of other text editors that have support to some degree for the Go language. So if you already have a favorite, you can see if it's in here, or kind of look through these options and pick one you like. I know Sublime Text is a very nice one with really good performance and a good plugin, but you have to pay for it. And there's also a Light IDE is made specifically for Go, and it's got a nice, small, simple program. So those are ones you could try too. All right, once VS Code is done installing, we can open it up for the first time. And I'm going to start a new folder. It's remembering some stuff I was doing in the past. So, users. So what you want to do is go to your home folder. So you can say C:/users and then your username, the same path you got to with user profile. And then to the Go subdirectory, and just keep digging all the way into here. And you can right click in here and make a new folder. Call it Hello World. Hit enter. And then with that highlighted, you can click the select folder button. And when you give Visual Studio Code a starting folder, that's kind of how it thinks of a whole project. It'll show you a view of your folder and everything inside of it. And we can make a new file by clicking on this icon here. And let's call it helloworld.go and hit enter. All right, so I'm going to type up a quick Go program. I'm not going to explain much yet. So if you're a total beginner, don't worry about anything yet. We're just going to type in kind of the simplest program we can, just to be sure we can actually compile it and run it, and that everyone's got things working. So we start out with package main, and we're going to, let me do something real quick. I have an extension that you guys don't have installed yet, so I'm going to uninstall it. That's why those pop-ups were coming. Okay. We're going to import the format package. And we're going to make a main function. And we're going to say hello world. So just sort of copy that line for now. And when you're done, you can hit Control S, and that will save it. And it's always a good idea, like things that you do a lot in your text editor, it's good to learn what the keyboard shortcuts are, so that you don't have to move your mouse and dig through the menus. You learn the keyboard shortcut, it's faster and easier. So Control S to save it. So once you've got this, you can go back to your command prompt and go into your Go directory and drill down all the way into your Hello World folder. And if you type dir inside your Hello World folder, you'll see the new file we've created, helloworld.go. And we can use the Go compiler now. So we can say go run hello world.go. And what that does is it tells the Go compiler to compile the hello world.go file to turn this text up here into machine code, and then also go ahead and run it. And what do we do? Oh, this should be in quotes. So we got a compiler error telling us what was wrong. So we'll fix it. Hit Control S to save it. And then you can always, in a command prompt, both Windows and Linux and Mac OS, you can hit the up arrow to just repeat the last command you did. And you can go through the whole history of your commands. It's a nice shortcut. So we'll try again. All right. It said hello world, which is cool. It's working. So if anyone in chat is following along and had a problem at this point, let me know, and we'll try to work through it. Okay. So the next thing we're going to do is we are going to set up a plugin that kind of makes programming in Go a little bit easier inside this editor. So inside Visual Studio Code, you can go to View and Extensions. And you'll notice here they always tell you what the keyboard shortcut is. So something that you do really often, you should take note of it, try to remember it. And you can search for the extension you want. And since we have a Go program open, it's kind of detecting that, I think, and recommending it. It may not be doing that on your machine. So if you type in Go in the search, top result will usually be this one, because it's a popular extension. So you can click on this and hit install. And it shouldn't take very long. And once it's done, you need to reload in order for it to become active. All right, so now you notice this pop-up comes up that I was getting before. This is the Go plugin is expecting a bunch of Go tools to be installed that it uses to provide its features, and it's not finding them. And asking you if you want to install them. And what you can do is go ahead and say install all. And you'll see here in the output window, it's going to start doing some work. And this will take a little while. So we'll just hang out while it goes. And what this is doing is it's going, pulling down from the internet different Go tools that can do things like check your source code to see if it's correct, format your source code, things like that. Okay. So once these things are all installed, if you remember before, we had the mistake in our program where it was expecting quotes around this format. If you notice now, when I hit save, I get little red squiggly lines underneath everything and some error messages down here. So what the Go plugin is doing for us is every time we save, it's checking our program to see if it actually could compile or not. And it tells us where the problem is. And I think if you hover over this, it'll give you an error message to try and help you figure out what's wrong. So if we fix that, and then hit save, the error message goes away. All right, and there's lots of other useful things the plugin can do that we'll get into later when we start making bigger programs. But for now, that's the main feature we're looking for, is that you can save and immediately get feedback on what's wrong. That's really handy. Okay. Does anyone have any trouble getting the plugin to work? Okay. So the next step is optional. Oh, we have a question. So someone is asking which library we plan on using for doing graphics work. We will be using initially SDL2. SDL2 is a cross-platform library that sort of helps you do all the very basic things, like helps you get a window open on any operating system, helps you get keyboard input, mouse input, joystick input, helps you interact with the sound system on a machine to play sounds. So we're going to start with that and kind of do graphics by hand. We're actually going to write to a byte array and create a put pixel function and do some basic graphics work at first. And then later we'll use OpenGL along with STL2. And basically the way it works is STL2 helps you get the window open, read the input, and then you use OpenGL to actually do all of the drawing to the window. So that's the plan. The first few things we're going to do are going to be console-based text games. Okay. Okay, so this next step is optional, but a lot of people like a integrated development environment experience. So rather than having to say go to the command line to kind of switch to your command prompt and do things, some people kind of like everything to happen inside the editor. And so if you hit Control tilde or Control single quote, it's the character under the tilde, right next to your one key. You can pop up a terminal inside VS Code, and it can be pretty handy because it's pretty quick. You can be typing your code up here, hit Control tilde, and it'll take you to the directory that the file is in, so you're all ready to go. And you can say go run hello world.go in here. It's exactly the same as your command line. It's just putting the command line inside of VS Code. But one trick you'll need to do if you're in VS Code, by default, it wants to do a PowerShell command line. It's remembering my settings, so it hasn't done that here. But for you, it's going to probably be in PowerShell, and you almost certainly don't want that. So we can fix that. If you go to File, Preferences, Settings, you'll get two windows that pop up side by side. Yours will most likely be empty if you haven't used VS Code before on the right side. And on the left side are sort of the default settings. And then you can override those over here on the right. Now, if you want to copy my settings exactly, you can do that. I have them up on the website. I'm going to paste the link into chat. So you can go there and then just copy this whole chunk of text. Hit Control C to copy it. And then Control V to paste it into here. Or if you want, you can just take this one line here. This line tells the integrated terminal to use a regular command prompt instead of PowerShell. So if you add that line, and then go down here and start a new command prompt, you should get a regular one, and then you can delete the PowerShell one with that little trash icon. And you can resize this to any size you want. What I usually do is, if I'm not using it, I hit Control tilde again to close it, so it's not taking up space. So you can just pop it open and closed really fast. All right, so that is what I was hoping to accomplish today. If everyone is able to get to this point, then we'll be ready to start learning some programming in the next stream. We have some extra time, so if anyone has questions about any of this setup, if anyone had any problems, or if anyone has questions about what we're going to be doing in the next stream, now's the perfect time to ask. Okay, we have someone saying that the sys native, so if we go back to settings, that this may not work for all OSs. I know that you can usually just do this also, and it should work. So if my settings don't work for you, you can try just putting in command. Ooh, looks like that does not work for me. Maybe you have to do, nope. So if sysnative doesn't work, what you may need to do is find where command.exe exists on your machine. Let's see. I'm checking to see if it is Windows System 32. It looks like it is on my machine, so you could try, if sysnative isn't working, try that instead. Even if you're on a 64-bit machine, it'll still be in there. Who knows why? So in chat, someone is asking if this series will be about making a game completely from scratch or with a pre-existing engine. So we will be making things from scratch, but it will not be one single large game. If you've seen the Handmade Hero stream, that's what Casey Muratori is doing. One big game from scratch in C++. Ours is going to be a series of very small projects. So we're going to start with some really simple text adventures, and then build up to more complex text adventures, and then we're going to start using SDL2 just as a way to get access to draw to the screen. We're going to actually do all the graphics and stuff by hand. So we're going to do some simple graphical games. We're probably going to recreate Pong, which is one of the first video games. And then we'll start doing some things like fractals and procedural generation. But everything's going to be a small, kind of bite-sized project that we can finish in a few days. And we'll work up eventually to doing some small 3D projects as well. So we'll do some things that are pretty complicated, but they're not going to be one big project that's going to take us a year or anything. Yeah, I didn't think sysnative was going to work either, but it did. VS Code seems to know what to do with it. Any other questions or problems so far? We have some people very excited about Golang. That's good. I'm glad you're excited. So someone is asking what framework. So initially, we're going to make some kind of text-based games. So we won't be using any framework at all. And as we start doing some graphical things, we're going to use the SDL2 framework, which really isn't much of a game framework. It really just is very low level. It lets you open a window, um, lets you basically blit bytes to the window, lets you get keyboard input. Um, I mean, you could get a little bit more low level if you used the operating system's API. But since we want to keep everything cross-platform here, SDL2 is really the best way to do that. It's a very low level thing. Everything's going to be from scratch. And then when we go do 3D, we'll be using OpenGL, which again, that's about as low level as anyone ever goes. All right, we've got a little bit of spare time, so I'm going to show a few editor tips for people who haven't used code editors like VS Code much. Most of these things also work in Visual Studio and Sublime, lots of editors. But feel free to keep asking questions in chat. I'll be checking in. Just some basics that people may not know if they're totally new. When you type in a text editor, you can highlight things not just with a mouse, but you can use the keyboard. You can hold down the Shift key and then use things like the arrows or the page up and page down to highlight text. And then you can, once it's highlighted, you can do things like cut and paste. You can cut with Control X. That will remove the text and make a copy. You can paste with Control V. That will put whatever you last copied or cut back onto the screen. Copy will make a copy without removing. That's Control C. So you could make lots and lots of copies. You can undo with Control Z. So the last thing you did will go away if you hit Control Z. And you can hit Control Y to redo. So basically undoing the undo. Those are all common operations that you'll start doing all the time if you start programming. I am teaching people how to copy and paste. We have some extra time, and I know that there are some people here who are in middle school and are complete beginners. Some a little bit fancier stuff. You can navigate a word at a time with Control and the arrow keys. And you can also delete things a word at a time with Control and the arrow keys. And that can also be handy for moving around faster. All right, so the plan is on the next stream, we're going to start introducing the Go language. We'll start teaching how variables are declared and assigned in Go. And if we have time, we'll get into how to do loops and if statements, and we'll do our first real small game. For people who have programming experience already, it'll be pretty simple, but we're going to get the beginners up to speed, and we'll start doing interesting stuff pretty soon. All right, I'll hang on 5 more minutes to see if anyone else has questions in chat, and then we'll log off for now. All right, guys. Looks like no more questions. So I will see everyone on Thursday, and we'll start learning some Golang then. All right, bye for now.